The Spanish hitherlands are controlled by the ability to resource the aqueducts of a furnace. So, under the ability to cook steam, there is a actuarial compromise with the lower bottom of a cylindrical reflection. And these reflections are antidotal to how a magnum and a magnifier accelerate the uh, aperture and anointment of each interior cell of a democratic front that deconstructs the ability of a bubble to gas the metric ton of a pottage and a ceiling. So ceilings are manufactured on a demography, but these demographies are utility and value. So if value is constructed, the construct is a unit of placebo rather than a frontier that activates the magnum itself. So if magnifiers accelerate electricity through a system, not only do the inversion take place from electrical charge to displaced units. These units are painted on a dialectic of master and slave that transfers a object to its host. And the host is inferred as if it is a junction between three triads of triads. And this is how the bottoming of a fire pit ignites a reversed engine. So an engine would be just a fireplace on a fireplace, which cooks the steam into a boiler. And the boiler allows it to invert the signal to plasticize anything that comes in between it. So if you cook anything that is heated on a accelerated plane, the magnifier injuncts the space around it and allows it to heat the boiling between the plates that instead reverse the flow and charge of anything it's cooking. So under heat, this would be a lot different than electricity because heat does produce electricity, but more importantly, heat produces pressure. So this magnetic field of pressure not only charges the pottage it's using, it allows it to be a liquid at the same time it's a solid. So if solidification occurs, not only does the pot bear weight on anything it resembles, it allows the top lining to be a conductor on the referral to remove the cone on top of its assemblage. So if there is a magnifier beneath the pot itself, not only does that also get hooked, the cooking pot is now a demos of how it cooks. So the entire assemblage is a portrait. So these portraits of heated sources are contained to themselves rather than obstructed. So this is how a 3D rendering occurs of a virtual image through the pressurization of light meeting electricity. So if light and electricity happen at the same time, not only does the furnace allow a opening on the questing line of a septuplian court, the ability to demographize anything around it is neglected for the reversed image of it. So if a reversed image happens, not only does the accepting of higher standards meet quantity, the quality of the source has to infer righteous claim over territory and not just land. So territory is a replacement for alkaline solutions, but that doesn't mean electricity is going to get transferred through it. So to get electricity to transfer through a heated wire lens, not only does the lens itself have to invert the axis, there must be three systems of axes that invert a single lens. So that as it inverts, it reflects and subtracts the image onto a magnifier. And these magnifiers are operative of the single lens it magnifies under. So as there is a reduction to the cylinder cuts the base and allows for a substance to accept the forensic of a diameter. And these diameters are object and length. So if an object and a length is inverted, not only does the cylinder subtract its base, the base is shrunk back to the cone, and the cone accepts the ability to maneuver each part of its body so that as it skins its outer exterior through the heating process, it sheds its ability to carry its content and opens up a court for opening lenses again and again. So this is a monopoly on capital and how monopolies form to subtract capital because they do not subtract property, they subtract claims to property. So if a claim to property occurs, not only must the object be inferable to your non-aligned tube of thought, the ability to have a furnace is not in your registry. So not only does the cooking effect not occur for weight, the weight is a reference of your own body. You don't have a body in these systems. The body was subtracted by someone else's lens. So if the lens itself is a object on a subject, not only do you have to make a cone to reverse such systems, the cone on the lens of the object must invert back onto the shade of the virtual image of itself and then reduce the lenses back into a trinity. So if the reduction of the flooring happens on such system, the system manipulates the image itself and you can see different colors of different objects from the coded images that the object is looking at. So there is a transfer from direct democracy to direct republic in these systems because there's a constitution that allows you to continue a continuity rather than a compromise. So if this compromise is a negative, not only does the negative relapse onto the carrying capacity of the brain is not the object here, it's the subject. So to make an object of the brain, you have to carve out pieces of the orientation of such effects, which does not destroy the relationship to power, but destroys the relationship to proximity to power. So proximity to power is toasted on a backing of a Republican law, and the law itself is inverted onto the signal, so the signal relates the object as if it was a thesis instead of a subject. So the subject is now a thesis, and the object is now a synthesis. So if a thesis and a synthesis meet, why is there no antithesis here? Because they do not deny each other, they deny the relationship to the units. So units are a relationship to these things, while the relationship to the antithesis would be meaning. So, under meaning, life occurs, and life is the ability to form objects as if they are on their own. And objects on their own are subtracted from systems of downward propensity and upward motion. So upward motion is a common commute between right and left under these systems, but to accept the object of such lesson, not only do you need to increase bearing on such weighted communities, the weighted classes are constructions of the thesis they operate under. So if a object is to create a logos under such system, which is a synthesis of antithesis and synthesis, there is a need for construction of the reality that it bears underneath and between. So under such systems, beneath the antithesis would be a migration. And migrations are sanded beaches that relate a broken joint onto a relaxed potential that dismantles the union of control around a object and then synthesizes it upwards as velocity. So velocity is a breach on the boiling point of synthesis, while synthesis is a draining of philosophy downward into object. So this is how a logos prepares from relationship to goals. So goals are a item under these systems, but they do not potentialize themselves. The potential is in the subject. So to get antithesis to relate back to the thesis, there has to be a migration between a order. An order is between ethos and logos, because the ethos is the final result of such system. So to get ethos, not only do you have to maneuver a object into a plane, the plane has to existentially drive the objects upward again and again. So if the upward velocity is a reach on the drift is a downward potential between each side of the order, and it replaces itself in each part of the equation. So the equation is a spectacle and an object that relates all the way back to itself. So that is how a pathos is made. Pathos is dilemma under these systems. So after you get such systems, not only do you have to obey the traffic laws that it commands. The commandment is a execution of the niceties that it creates. So this is how modernity formed. Modernity formed from the ability to obey traffic laws. So traffic laws are obsolete under such systems, but not only does this release you from the dark ages of a pantheism of forestry, the forest is a system of creation of these cultures. So not only does it overrun such system, it undermines the ability to reject